Well, hello, little DVRs that go on your quad. I saw a few people have been messing around with them and I was really interested to test it out. So the idea of these is where you've got like a 2-inch or 3-inch quad where it's a little bit small to carry a proper HD camera. What you can do is record directly from the camera itself before it gets transmitted onto 5.8 and introduces all that, noise and static as we fly through trees and that. And that could present quite a nice recording and something you could share quite happily on YouTube. So I thought this is an excellent way of doing a comparison to see how well they are against your regular DVR in your goggles. Now I thought it'd be a great idea if I got hold of a couple of these things just to compare them, and so I looked for different ones. Now since I sourced these, Runcam have bought their own one out, but it is based around like the 20mm mini stack, and for a lot of the quads I'm talking about I haven't actually got room to put another thing on the stack, so I was quite happy to test these as they are and see. So the first one I got is the HMDVR from Happy Model. Now both these things have been supplied by Gearbest, so many thanks to them. So in the HMDVR package you get the little unit itself, which comes in this little sort of case. You could take it out there if you want to, but it's got a little slot for the SD card, obviously a micro SD card. It's got a little connector of which comes with these that you plug into and solder up the other end. One page of instructions, not in-depth instructions, but certainly enough to know how to solder that up. And basically how it works. I mean, it gives some warnings about making sure you wait 10 seconds before starting it. It talks about how it auto saves every 3 minutes, and I think there's going to be a little gaps between those recordings. But yeah, we get the gist of that. So when I was on Gearbest website, I looked for a different one of these, and I found this one called, it just was described as 720p video FPV DVR, and it said its resolution was 1280 by 480, which was weird. And it says this uses HJPEG, where the this one uses MJPEG. Yeah, Motion JPEG. Here it is here. Now it's $3 more expensive as well, I should point out. And what you get here is this board and these instructions. I used the word loosely. They certainly didn't go over the top with those instructions. It's basically a rectangle and describes the pinouts, but it doesn't even tell you about what the button does or anything. When I looked at these together, I thought that looks really quite the same. And so when I took the top off this and had a look, I could see that it looked exactly the same. And it even had the same board revision number on it. Now the specs claim to be different, so I'll have a look and see what happens. But as it's from the looks of it, it's like you get a cable, you get proper instructions, you get a little case in this one, and it's $3 cheaper. In this one you get a board with nothing and the worst instructions known to man. So from the face of it, certainly the HMDVR looks much better, but because they use the same pinouts, I should just be able to try it with one, swap it straight up for the other, and see what we get from that. So let's get it installed, shall we? Right, so here's the quad I'm going to mess around with to fit one of these things on. This is the JetRC Sparrow, one of my favourite quads, most certainly my favourite 3-inch I've ever flown. Really, really nice quad. And what it's got here, it hasn't got an OSD, it's got the Runcam Micro Swift 2, and I notice it's going to the VTX here with this red power cable. And obviously there's a ground and video, so hopefully I should just be able to piggyback on those to run it. Now as far as the sizing goes for this is something where simply putting another stack on, I think it maybe fit. It's a bit tight here, and it's for a cased version, it's not going to go in anywhere. Now for the testing, because I want to swap these over and see the difference, I'm just going to pop this on top like so, and then I can swap over. But I think if that all works out okay, what I'm going to do is look for an opportunity to put a decased version in. And I think it's probably going to be the case of taking the receiver up, putting this in like this, perhaps going a little bit forward to give it the extra room because of this. There's a restricted section here, but if we move it forwards and have it sort of half sticking out, we should be okay, and then popping the receiver back on top. But let's get this apart first, and I'll double check that is going to be 5 volts coming out of the VTX before I plug the little DVR in. So I double checked this voltage coming out was about 5 volts, which it comes up at about 4.9, that's close enough. So I'm going to connect onto the top of that. And this is what it looks like. I've just gone onto the top pads with the existing stuff already on the bottom. That seems to work out okay. As it turned out, the DVRs were different. This is the little HMDVR, and you can see the light come on straight away, and you're supposed to wait for about 10 seconds before you press the button for it to finish initializing. Once you press the button, you'll see the lights start to flash. That means it's recording. So what you have to do then is, do your stuff, and when you press the button again, it stops recording, which is fairly simple. And with both these, it's really important that you actually stop the recording manually, else you don't get a file at the end of it. But let's swap over now, and I'll show you the difference I found with the other one. So I've got the other one attached. Let's plug back in, and we can soon see the difference. So we get a solid light again, as before, and then after a little while it starts flashing. So this one actually starts auto-recording, which I think is actually quite a good feature. And after this point it works the same. So you press the button again to stop the recording, and then you can press the button and you can start it and stop it to your heart's content, basically. I looked at both files from both recorders and they were identical, actually having 1280 by 720 at 30 frames a second, which is not quite what they said in the spec. Hello, welcome to the field on another glorious day. It's only 10 o'clock, the sun is already shining very brightly. I've got the JetRC Sparrow. I've kind of lazily installed the HMDVR, mainly so I can just pop the other one on the top to test that as well. And I'm going to fly it around here. Pick this place because A, I can stand in the shade over there. B, because often I go over through these bits and behind things, which can cause a lot of static, and of course this should get rid of that in the recording. I just have to be careful because it's a Saturday. Make sure there's no dog walkers coming up here. So I did a bunch of flights using this and using both of the DVRs, which came out exactly the same. So I thought I'd show you one kind of side by side, if you like. So in this one I've got my HMDVR recording. That's the main screen with the DVR recording up in the corner there. And there's a couple of things to note instantly here. First is that the DVR recording on the little HMDVR is actually stretched out and it's scaled up to 1280 by 720, which is kind of interesting because the spec for it says it records in 640 by 480, but they both do exactly the same thing. They record 1280 by 720 at 30 frames a second. Obviously, it's not putting in pixels and detail that isn't there, it's scaling it up, but it actually looks pretty good. If it wasn't for the fact I've got some OSC from the camera, I'd be like, well, this is a cheap and cheerful HD camera, but it's not doing a bad job because it looks actually really nicely. It's also very kind of different from the DVR in the goggles. I mean, people have said for a long time that the DVR in FatSharks isn't particularly good, but you'll see it here, the colours are completely different and everything. I do have a little bit of noise on both pictures from the camera. I'm not sure if there's just a little bit of flicker on the horizon. I'm not sure if that's electrical noise or the sensor in the camera or what. I do know there's a bit of a blob on the camera. If you look very closely in certain times, like now, you can see a sort of a little circular blob going on there. So one of the obvious things we've got here is, we're not recording any static in the HMDVR, which is fairly obvious. But the other thing I did notice is how better the picture actually was. If I change this now and we'll just look at the DVR footage by itself and then look at that in comparison, I'm going to bring them up side by side just so you can see, and I'll also just correct the time because it's gone a little bit out of sync. And what I notice when doing this is even when you've got a fairly clear signal, the quality of the recording using the HMDVR is just so much better than the FatSharks. It actually looks like I'd say an HD recording. It's close to a pretty basic sort of, I remember the old keychain type 720p cameras. It's sort of on that level, I think, from this point of view. The colours are better, it seems smoother, you obviously haven't got any static. It's definitely something you could happily put up on YouTube and have a reasonable picture on there if that's that sort of thing you're looking to do. Now, one thing we are getting from this is the output of the DVR from the camera. So
you have choices. If you had a sort of regular flight controller with an OSD built in, what you might want to do is get hold of the camera signal before it went into the flight controller, because that would give you a straight, clean camera image with no writing. Of course, if you wanted the OSD stuff on there, you'd get it as it went to the VTX, but I think most people would want it sort of clear. On this one, I haven't really got a choice because obviously the OSD is built into the Runcam Swift itself. So as I mentioned, these little DVRs record in 3-minute sections. When it gets to 3 minutes, it goes on to a new file. So do you have a join in between? So I've set this up so I can show the difference between part 1 and part 2, with part 2 coming up just about now. You could see there perhaps 1 or 2 dropped frames as it went to the next file. It kind of depends how bad that is in where it occurs. If it occurs just in the middle of you doing something epic, it's going to be just a little bit of a judder, which is going to be annoying. But for the most part, it seems okay. Unfortunately, there's no choice in setting that up or anything. It's a 3-minute file. One thing that's really important on both of them is to make sure when you come into land that you press the button to stop the recording. If you unplug the power, it's not even a case that you'll get a corrupted recording. It will just throw it away. You won't get anything at all. So always press the button to make sure you stop recording, and you can see that light goes solid instead of flashing.
Okay, I perhaps got a little bit over enthusiastic whilst I was looking with this on my editing screen, and the window for this is smaller than when I blow it out on the big screen. Having blown it out on a big screen, yes, it's not like HD, but you can tell that it's been scaled up, obviously. But it's a good recording, and I'm liking it. Now, you'll notice that I've still got it sat on top. What I was intending to do is get this little one and, having tested it out, put this inside. And this basically rode piggyback for one of those tests like this on a sticky pad. There's a problem though, and it's both the same design in this one. Now I can put this into there, no problem, and I can have it so obviously I'd need the SD card slot poking out one way or the other, either that way or that way. Unfortunately, the button to start it is on a sort of right angle to the slot. If I had the slot this way, I'd have the button back there, and if I had the slot that way, I'd have to somehow get up there for the button. So I haven't really got a solution for that at the moment. Even this one, although I could switch it around the other way, I sort of use a little screwdriver just to press the button there. So I'm sort of unsettled on how I'm going to put this inside. Now I did notice that the Runcam has the sensible option of having the SD card slot here and the button on the other side, so you could reach it both ends, which is much more sensible idea. So I have to try and get hold of those and check it out. I'm still not sure it will fit in the stack here, but you know, as another option, what could go wrong? The more options you have, the better, obviously, isn't it? So a few things to note, and because a few worries for people and a few little gotchas just to be aware of. One of these takes 200 milliamps of power. Now I had no problem running this from my VTX, which was generating the 5 volts to power the camera, and obviously the camera wasn't taking all the power. But I didn't check it. I just put it on and see if it would work, which is perhaps not the best way to do it. Perhaps the best way is checking what it actually outputs and if there's enough power there to run it as well. But just be aware of that, because on some situations you might need a separate 5 volt regulated power to run something like this from. Now some people often worry about latency on these, and that's only the case if you were going to go video signal into this and then video signal back out to something else, because there'd obviously be processing in between. What we're doing is we're just piggybacking. There's an existing signal and we're just sort of almost jumping onto it as it flows, if you like. So we're not adding any latency at all there, so you don't have to worry about that one. But I have to say, I am a fan, despite the mounting problems on this particular one. The fact that something that small in the case or that small out of the case will pretty much go on anything, 3-inch, 2-inch, little planes as well, or stuff where you really don't want to take it away. I mean, I've seen people put them on race quads because they want a decent video of what they're doing, but obviously they don't want to have to take something like a GoPro. These things weigh, decased it weighs 2.3 grams. So at 2.3 grams it will pretty much go on anything. So I kind of like this for the stuff that I can't carry a GoPro and I can't even carry a small action camera. because the footage you get from them is at least good enough to share on YouTube, and a lot better sometimes than the DVR you get. I mean, I like watching DVR footage sometimes because it sort of shows the sort of signal people are dealing with, and how they're coping with that. But of course, if people just want to show where they were flying and what they were doing and the sort of scenery, you're not really interested in the static or the OSD over the top and that sort of thing. So yeah, obviously in terms of which one to get, this one is fairly pointless. It's quite nice that it records automatically when you switch it on, but you know, the fact it doesn't come with a lead or any instructions or a case is a bit rubbish, and it's more expensive than the little HMDVR, which comes with a nice case. You can always take it out of the case, but crucially it comes with a lead that you can solder in, and you've got proper instructions, so that's quite nice. Anyway, so these both came from Gearbest, so I've popped the links down below. Check them out if you want to have a look at them, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.